And somebody looked at it and said, Johnny, when was the last time you piped two indirects together? Well, we always pipe them in parallel. No. You always pipe water heaters in series.
Oh, God, I hate
therefore,
that argument, by the way.
And therefore, we have two indirects with the supply and return piped in series.
Because it's like 30 degrees outside here still in the morning. It's
so nice out here.
Oh my gosh. It has been pretty nice. It has been pretty nice. And I'm glad we're starting this episode talking about the weather because it kind of brings us back. It's kind of like back to our
little old
MTGA roots.
That's right.
All right, guys. Welcome to the Make Trades Great Again podcast. I'm Eric Ani. He's Andy Mickelson. We are going to talk today about a recent job I looked at, Andy.
Okay. Let's hear
the deets. Yeah, just yesterday. Got a call. Really liking that AI phone answering system, by the way. Good. And got a call, local, hopefully to be a customer. Get a call and go out to this house. And first of all, you ever just go into a neighborhood you didn't even know existed in your area? You're just like, whoa, I've never been down this street. And all of a sudden there's just like all these, you're like, oh, where have all these houses been? Well, obviously right here, dummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've been
That's
here
the way it was. Yeah.
Since they were built.
Yeah, since they were built in the early 2000s, by the way. This is less than a mile from the house I previously lived in, but that was a million years ago. Anyway, big old house on the lake in Elk River here, and nice place. Unique, very unique house. But anyway, I get a call because the guy says, hey, we just run out of hot water constantly. And I said, okay, describe what's going on. What do you have? And he's like, well, we have a boiler and we have these water heaters connected to it. And I said, wait, water heaters? And he says, yeah, we have two of these blue tanks. They're like Buderis. Yeah, that's it. Buderis. That's how you say it. I'm like, yep. They're German. And he says, yeah, so we have two of them and they're 80 gallons each. And I'm like, wait, what? You have two 80-gallon indirect water heaters and you're running out of hot water? So then naturally my first question was, how many people are in your house? And he says, just 4. And I said, is it like, 4 people that are just taking showers all day long? What, just describe what he was like, well, a couple teenagers and I don't think we take like long showers or anything. I mean, what's a long shower to you? And I said, long shower, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. That to me is a long shower.
Yeah.
He says, oh yeah, no, we're fine. I mean, I probably take a 5-minute shower and my wife probably takes a 15-minute shower. And I said, well, then that means you take at least a 10-minute shower and she probably takes a 30-minute shower. I joked. I said, I said, I'm joking. And I said, who would know? And I'm not going to assume anything, but every time I say I take 5 minutes to do something, it's really 10, you know what I mean? And he chuckled. He says, yeah, well, anyway, I've been living in this house for a couple of years and it just runs out of hot water every day. We run out. And I'm like, that is wild. I said, you must have some big showers or something like that. He says, no, I think they're pretty normal. I said, oh, I got to come take a look. So I went and looked. And that's when I found out this neighborhood existed and it was interesting and all this stuff. I kind of laughed at myself at that. And, I thought, God, a lot of missed opportunity here, dummy. You didn't even know these houses existed.
Could put a yard sign out in somebody's house.
I know.
Somebody's house. Be like,
yeah, they're on the lake and they're pretty big. They're pretty fancy houses for the area. I'll be honest with you. I get there and sure enough, it's this big radiant system. Million zones, all on zone valves. It's copper, just a wall of copper. And it looked like it was, the house was built in 2008, or at least that's when everybody moved in. So give you a time frame. Bunch of copper. It looks nice. It looks well organized. It looks like who put it in did a nice job, but it has elements to it, given its era in which it was built, that I would not have done this way. Sure. Like it barely has a low loss header, and that's because it's attached to the boiler. Like it's a Navium boiler, so it has the stainless low loss header on the bottom of it,
right?
Which would not have been the original boiler, by the way.
No,
this boiler is just a couple years old. Uh, Tons of zone valves. They were all replaced when the boiler was put in a couple years ago. And, first and foremost, noticeably, it's all in-floor heat throughout the entire house.
Okay.
Big house, 7,000 square feet. And most noticeably, right away, you look and like the main lines coming off supply and return of that header coming out the boiler are 1 inch. So like small pipe sizing for the amount of things that are going on here.
Sure.
And some convoluted piping connection to the run over to these indirect water heaters. Cause it's weird because boiler sits probably about 15 feet away from the water heaters.
Okay.
And the wall the boiler's on is just covered in piping. But then kind of around the corner and off to the side are these 2 indirects, and 80-gallon Boderis indirects. They are large. Well, 80-gallon anything's large, but these things are big. These things are probably, 5'10", 5'8" off the floor to the top, but they're like, I'm going to go with a full 2-foot square, like they're large tanks. And, I'm looking at it and I'm like, where are the piping? Like trying to make sense of the coil, the supply and return piping coming off the back of it. And my whole point is this: I'm looking at it going, I don't think these things are piped right. They're not piped right. Like what is going on? And I'm looking at it. It takes me about 2 seconds. It takes me about 1 minute to realize that the boiler is feeding these 2 indirect water heaters with 3/4 inch pipe to the heating coils, to the heat exchangers. But worse than that is, so first of all, anybody doesn't know, 3/4 inch pipe size to supply a domestic hot water production on an indirect water heater from a boiler is in like 99% of the time isn't large enough. You can't get enough water through that pipe to have a very high production rate of domestic hot water in these tanks. But then I'm looking at it going, well, wait a minute. When's the last time I had 2 indirect water heaters anywhere
Right.
at all? And I think, especially in like a residential boiler, and I'm thinking like, how are they controlling these things? Like how in the world are you going to control a separate call for heat between 2 different indirect water heaters to one single boiler that isn't made for anything special like this? No special controls added or nothing.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, that's goofy. I identify right away the pipe size is wrong. And then I go, oh, wait a minute. There are only 1 supply and 1 return coming from this boiler to these 2 tanks. So how are they heating 2 tanks off of 1 supply and 1 return? And I look in a little closer and there's a lot of pipe and it's behind kind of in between the tanks and the walls. So it's a little harder to see and make sense of. There's a bunch of extra stuff like recirc lines and stuff like that. And I realize, oh, they're piped in series. The heat exchanger, the boiler side of these indirects are piped in series.
So
supply into 1, return out of 1 into supply of 2.
And so is
so
it
the first tank is
reverse?
Go ahead.
Like, so the first supply is
well,
the second
it might
tank?
have been. No, it wasn't. It's not pipe reverse. It's not. It's
what?
It's literally piped in series.
So what is the domestic side in series as well, or are they in parallel?
No, so that's what's so crazy. So the domestic side, when he calls me and he tells me this information over the phone, I get the bit of information that I'm reminded of when I'm standing there. The water heater split the house in 2 sides.
Okay.
It's a large, you could technically call this like a ranch rambler style house.
Sure.
There's not upstairs is a main level and a basement.
Yeah.
But it's
Big.
It's big. It's big. And so they split the house in 2, east and west, let's call it, north and south. Does not matter. It's
East wing,
right and left.
West wing.
Yep. And so one side is like 1 or 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and the laundry room. And then the other side is like the primary, another couple bathrooms, and downstairs bathroom and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And so it turns out the information this guy's given me is here's a little piece of the puzzle that kind of makes me laugh. After I figure out it's piped in series, meaning the first tank is always just getting heated, regardless of which one is being used. And the second one takes forever to heat up because you have to wait for the first one to, you're just
Basically, be
tepid
unable to
water into
absorb
it.
heat.
Yeah,
Right.
you're sending cold water into it to heat.
Right.
So they're running out of hot water in one tank because as recent as like a year ago, everybody started sleeping and using the bathrooms on the one side of the house, the opposite side of the house that has a hot tank, by the way. And so I said, well, I think I figured out your problem. First of all, this was never piped right. It just wasn't. I said, when you had this boiler in, did they change anything on these tanks? He says, oh no, that's always been that way. I said, well, were you running out of hot water before you put the boiler in? Oh yeah. Well, then why did you put the boiler in? And why didn't you address the hot water at the time? Well, they said this would make the hot water, and like it just apparently hasn't. I'm like, yeah, well, also it's not the best boiler, but anyway, that's aside from that. I said the pipe is too small. I said these tanks, like at minimum, you need like 1.25 inch pipe over here. That's over twice the diameter of what you've got now, meaning I can push through theoretically twice as many gallons per minute safely and deliver more than twice the BTUs to these tanks.
So do they have?
But they're not going to heat properly in the first place. You don't need two tanks.
Do they have two aquastats?
They do.
And they must be wired in parallel as well.
They're wired. They're
or in
sharing.
series.
No, they're just both wired to a 2-wire thermostat wire running over to the control on the boiler.
Whoa. So my first concept of this is let's go back to 2007.
Yeah.
Or 2006. Homeowner meets with architect, builder, GC, whatever, and says, I want to build this big ass home on the lake.
It is big too. It is, yeah. Even by what you judge this,
7,000 square feet is a house. It's a big house.
It's a big ass house.
Yeah. and homeowner says, I'd like to build this big house. We want a big ranch. We got lots of kids, lots of family, whatever.
I want this extravagant radiant system.
Big bathrooms. We got lots of bathrooms.
I want a boiler out in the garage. I don't want this boiler having to take care of that. He's got that.
Yep. And so I want lots of hot water. I don't want to run out of hot water ever, and so architect takes that as we're putting a lot of water heaters in here because theoretically lots of water heaters equals never running out of hot water, which then is translated to the general or the mechanical contractor that we're going to put 2 80-gallon tanks in here.
Yeah.
And the mechanical contractor says, it's just money. It's not mine. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I do know.
And then this is what you end up with. And somebody looked at it and said, Johnny, when was the last time you piped 2 indirects together? Well, we always pipe them in parallel. No. You always pipe water heaters in series.
Oh God, I hate
therefore,
that argument, by the way.
And therefore we have 2 indirects with the supply and return piped in series because somebody, instructions are where? Like under the tank? I don't know. I mean, it maybe came with the box. I don't.
Well, I can tell you that there's probably no instructions on a boiler indirect to tell you how to put more than one of them together. You know what I mean?
No, but
it's
you wouldn't.
Not in the manual.
But I mean, common sense says you don't pipe it into one and into the next one. I mean, come on.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the very minimum, on the boiler side of it, should have been reverse return, right? So you're feeding both tanks technically at the same time, but you're taking a 3/4 inch line. And let's say everything's equal and you have equal flow through both oils on the tank. Let's just say that that's the case because you should be able to achieve that with reverse return piping.
Yes.
And if anybody doesn't know, if you're unclear what I'm talking about, reverse return, think of the supply and return stacked top and bottom on each tank. And the supply is going to go into tank 1 first, tank 2 second, but return is going to come out of tank 2 first and then out of tank 1 second. And in theory, then you don't have to worry about equal pipe spacing or anything like that. You have equal flow through both coils, but just by pushing water in the supply.
And that only works if you have an equal load on each tank, though, right? Like you can't do the east and west side of the house with that, because you're gonna have one tank that is going to be receiving heat whether it needs it or not. Like, you know what I mean? You really should
No,
have a zone
I
valve
think
or something to stop flow through the tank that's satisfied.
well, you should for performance purposes. It doesn't matter if you're sending hot water into a tank. Once it gets to a point it can't absorb it, it's not going to absorb
Yeah,
it.
but
It doesn't
if
matter.
you're putting 180-degree water as your supply water, you're theoretically your tank's gonna eventually approach 180 degrees.
No, you're 100% right there. Yes, you're correct. Meaning
So
you could overshoot without a mixing valve. You have a dangerous
Yeah.
situation.
Yep.
Again, another reason to use a thermostatic mixing valve on the outlet of a boiler supplied water tank. This is a
Yeah.
dangerous situation that you have created. In theory, if you had enough boiler and it were piped properly.
Yeah.
Because you're missing, like you said, a pretty significant portion of the control, and that's zoning. So anyway, the what I was going to say though is, even if it were reverse return, what you're doing is you're splitting in half. In
Yeah.
theory, you're taking half the amount of gallons per minute you can run through 3/4 and sending it to each tank, because you can't maintain that kind of flow rate with a head loss through the coil and provide the proper amount of BTUs into each tank equally. So they're supplying. Put it this way, if they stay within the velocity limits, or what were guidelines of no more than about 4 feet per second on flow rate for velocity, they're supplying roughly, let's say, 6 to 7 gallons per minute of water through or to these tanks. Doesn't matter how much is going through the tanks, because I can't
Right.
even figure that out. But they're only putting about 6 or 7 gallons per minute through there right now. If the velocity, if it's not screaming, and it's not, because it's running
Yeah.
with a Takeo 009 pump, which is just it's just like a high head, low flow
High head,
pump, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I see a 009, I just get this like blue light special running. You know,
Isn't
like
a
alarms.
009 like a solar kind of, like, isn't that what you use for like that?
No, well, it's purpose built, like you said, high head, low flow. If you had a radiant system that somebody was like, I didn't realize you couldn't exceed, the recommended 300 feet, and we just put 600 feet of tubing in the ground and it's continuous. Well, you're going to use 009 of that nature, because no other Takeo circulator, other than the 0012, which is the other high head model, is going to produce that kind of head pressure.
Yeah.
And so you're just not going to get flow. It's like I say, every time I see a 009, it's a Band-Aid. Like, yeah, last guy came in and said we didn't have enough pump, so we put in this high head pump, and it worked a little better, but it still didn't fix the problem.
Well, also how this pump, just remind you of the boiler that's on there. It's a Navian wall hung. It has a high head loss heat exchanger.
Sure.
By comparison to most others.
Yeah.
It's a NHB, I believe, water tube style.
Yeah.
So it requires a decent amount of flow rate through it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So like, I think what's happening is like you said, somebody came in, put the pump in there, said, well, this'll work, or this is the right one, or
This'll
whatever
solve
their
it.
understanding was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not the right pump. And
Right.
simply stated, like something as simple as like a 2699 Grundfos
Yeah.
would probably be the right one for that application. But either way, it's not piped right. It's not even given an opportunity. That's what I have to tell the customer. Like, I have these conversations. I have to check myself in this situation each time, because I get like I'm like, this is not right, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
Oh my God.
settle down, dude. Chill out, man. You have no chill right now. So I'm like, I'm trying to explain to this guy, I'm like, dude, this just never even had a chance to work. It's just not right. I could cut one tank out and probably make hot water for you.
And an 80 in a 4-person household, if you just had a properly heated 80, I mean, and this is where my mind was going. We're talking about this. I'm like, you don't need a new tank, just like cut, repipe it right. But then the reality comes in. These are 18 years old.
Yeah, and they're steel tanks.
They're 18-year-old carbon steel tanks. They're at the end of their life. They're right there, tip tapping on death's door, and
they are,
I mean,
and decent water quality, but nonetheless, there's
Softener.
color coming out at the hot faucet, right? So
Yeah.
like, if you fill up a a sink or a bathtub, you can see there's a tint to it. And so to me, the only explanation I have, because it's municipal water, first of all, and there's softening happening. But the municipal, like this city water, I lived in this. I could tell you the water is fine. There's nothing wrong with the water that they're getting. I mean, it's chlorinated, but it's certainly not, iron or anything like that.
We're not talking.
And so to me, the tanks are failing, if you ask me, if you're getting that coloration in the tank or at the faucet. And it's only on the hot side. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that's what spurred this guy, besides the fact that I think that's what the guy's not pursuing them being repiped. He wants them replaced because he's also identified on his own. And I confirmed when I was there. And like I just explained, it looks like they're probably also failing because they're getting the rusty kind of water at the faucet. Anyway,
when you do demo, because you'll get the job, right? When
you get,
yeah, when you do demo, you're gonna find like 1.5 inch black iron nipple on the top of one of the water heaters.
Oh God! You'd think by now, if that were the case, we wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think a nipple is gonna cause it to be, the source. But you're right. You're right.
You're gonna find some interesting things as these come out, and you're gonna be like, wait, what?
Well, I'm wondering how much these things weigh. Do you think that they're just standard? Like, they're going to have some stupid like concrete liner on them or something like that? Are they?
I hope not.
I don't know.
We have that one in that big house where we put those 3 Viessmanns. That's a 280 gallon Semline tank. And I look at it. The last time we were there, we pulled the coil out of it when we put those boilers in, because I was like, wow, we better, they've had a water softener, but house is 20 years old. Let's pull the coil and inspect it. And I pulled it out, and Rob and I were working together, I think, on that one. And I'm like, God, I hope this tank never fails. It's like you're saying that. I mean, your tanks are 6 foot tall, and they're 28 inches in diameter. This Semline tank is like almost 8 feet tall. It's like there was 9 foot ceilings in this mechanical room. And it's dang near touching the ceiling, and I bet it's got, with the insulation. I don't know. The insulation's got to be 2 or 3 inches thick, but it's got to be approaching 36 inches in diameter. And I'm like, I don't even want to know how much this thing weighs. Like, it's on 2-inch pipe legs, like 2-inch Schedule 40 legs sticking out of the bottom of it. I'm like, this is gonna suck.
That's crazy. I mean, you know what though? I just Googled this, and as we're talking, these might be stainless steel. Is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, sure.
I need to look at the models.
Yeah. I mean, if they're stainless tanks, they might have a good life left on them. They wouldn't be, subject to anode issues or, anything like that.
But he said that he changed anodes on them.
I mean, maybe they do have an anode, but
I have to look for that.
I mean, you might look. I mean, if they are stainless, then maybe repiping them is the better option.
I would say it would be, but they need 1.25 inch runs over to them.
Or I mean, here's the reality of it. Delete one of them, slide it over in the corner, right? Drain it, get the house connected to one, and pipe it correctly. And if with 120,000 BTU input, you're not going to. I mean, I would think a family of 4 would have a hard time running an 80 out of hot water if it's piped correctly.
If you pipe it right and you put a mixing valve on it and set the storage temp a little higher.
I mean, I
could make that thing perform just like a 100-gallon tank easily.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, you think of how many houses that we've put 85,000 BTU Viessmann in with a 53-gallon or a 42-gallon indirect, and you're like, you can't run that out of hot water. Not normal.
I can't do it at my house. We have a 53, so I have a 200 series boiler. That doesn't matter. It's 85,000 BTUs.
Sure.
I have a 53-gallon indirect, and the reason I don't have a 42-gallon indirect at my house is because there's a 6-foot drop in, circa early 2000s jetted tub in my bathroom. I'd love to get rid of it one day, but getting rid of it does not solve anything for me. It's just going to be a different version of the same thing because Heather likes to use a bathtub.
And the 53 works fine.
The 53 works fine because I store it at 140 degrees.
Yeah.
I'd store it at 135 degrees and then I mix down to 120, 125. And I'm fine. I mean, like, I can't run that thing out. She uses so typically, like, when she's bathing, it's also typically like I'm around the same time frame, right?
Yeah.
So, like, she'll take a shower, let's say on the weekend, she'll fill her bath up to whatever, however many inches in the bottom of it. She don't fill the tub or anything, but she probably throws a good solid 70, 80 gallons in this stupid thing. And, out of a 53-gallon tank, and I can jump in the shower and just take a shower, right? I mean, as soon as she
Right.
turns that faucet off, I can just start showering. And I'm a long shower guy. Like,
Yeah. Nice and hot.
admittedly, until I'm told I have to change my ways, I'm a solid 20 minutes. You know what I mean? No, on the day, on a long shower, I could take a 5-minute shower. It's fine. But, like, if I got the time, I'm gonna stand there for 15 minutes
Yeah.
easy and burn off a ton of, at 2.5 gallons per minute,
Yeah.
Anyway, so we went over all of this, and now I'm kind of questioning whether those are stainless or not, and why if they're stainless, why is he getting color? That
Right.
doesn't make sense to me. I must not. I need to look at my pictures better, and I can't right now because I'm using my phone as the camera as we speak. But anyway, I was just flabbergasted. Like, first of all, they're not piped right. We've covered that. I don't need to go over and over and over on that. But what needs to change on the piping is it needs to go up to 1.25 inch pipe diameter size. Even if
1
I
inch
would
at
be
least.
well,
I mean, if you're
and I
doing
wouldn't,
one, right? Like,
yeah, I'm going to one, and we're going to one tank. My proposal was to put in, it was kind of against my better judgment. I would like to put the 79-gallon Wiesmann in.
Yeah.
I should back up. This guy calls me because he sees my name listed on the Wiesmann website. He somehow landed on stainless steel indirect tanks. He saw Wiesmann's site. He
Lifetime
says,
warranty.
"Oh, this guy's local. Yeah, lifetime warranty. Looks like a good product. Why don't I just go down this route?" So that's how I got called into the job in the first place.
Yeah.
So shout out to Wiesmann. Thanks for having my info on your site, because it does drive customers my way. I would go 1.25 inch anyway. And the reason why is because if you, like, we were looking up specs of the tanks, like even at the 119, which against my better judgment, I wanted to put a 79 in, but I quoted him the 119 because he's insistent on that being what he needs. And I'm not going to try to convince him otherwise and then be wrong, first of all, but in any case, we look at the specs on the tank, and its rating for its engineered output, like its rated plate, for gallons per hour, that kind of thing, is at 14 gallons per minute, 180-degree water input. Well, that means you got to have a lot of boiler on the other side of that tank in order to maintain 14 gallons per minute. And I think this is where everybody gets, I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of techs, that are on their own to design these systems, that aren't employing the use, like an engineer or a designer or something like that. They look at that spec and go, how the hell am I going to get 14 gallons per minute out of this 85,000 BTU boiler? I can't. I couldn't possibly do that. And I go, well, you're right. You're not going to get that. You're going to get about half that. And that's why people start to go into sizing boilers based off of domestic hot water load, because they look at the specs on the tank itself and go, well, I got to do this. I must have to have a 200,000 BTU boiler.
Right.
Which you and I prove wrong all the time. I mean, there are certain scenarios where this is true, but in a residential application, it is not. And you could make 120 gallons of hot water with 85,000 BTU boiler. It's just not going to be, it's not going to have the same gallons per hour rating that are on that spec sheet for that tank. But it's going to be enough for a residential application, normal, right?
Yeah.
We do it all the time. In fact, my most common combination for my customers is 85,000 BTU boiler and a 42-gallon indirect, like you just said a minute ago. Like I do that. That's pretty much my go-to. And the reason why, a couple of reasons why I like that. First of all, it performs perfectly for me. I set the tank a little higher temperature, and I always use a mixing valve on the outlet of it, so we have safety built into it, but also performance. Setting that tank at a higher temp allows us to get more gallons per hour out of it, and it cuts into that whole maintaining or recovery situation. We're less demand on the recovery, basically, because by the time it's really pushing itself, you're probably out of the shower. So, um, in this case, if I'm even going to get close to that rating on that tank, I got to put a lot more gallons per minute through it, and it's not going to be done with even 1-inch pipe. I don't feel comfortable doing that, so it's going to be 1.25 inches. Given its distance too, it's going to have roughly, I'd say, not including fittings for footage, it's going to have about 15 to 16 feet of copper tubing between the boiler and the indirects, and then add some fittings on it. So you get to, you're going to realize the limit of that 1-inch pipe even pretty quick, in my opinion. But I don't know.
Just looking here. Lochinvar used to have, and the only reason why I reference this is they used to have in their, I thought it was in a tech design manual, they used to have a chart that would show you gallon. I mean, it was just essentially like a comparison chart. There it is.
It was like a D-rating chart for first hour rating, right?
First hour rating, and it was so that if you look in their install manual on the Lochinvar Squire stuff,
like the
and you can
or something like that.
Yeah, SIT. If you look at the chart, it'll give you like the model number of the tank, and then you can scroll down the column, or the rows gives you from 40,000 BTU heating capacity up to 325,000. So a 120 gallon tank with 120,000 BTUs input at 5 GPM should get you 344 gallons an hour.
At 180 degree supply temp.
Yeah. Yes.
I'd say that's pretty high. I'm
just saying this is.
I guess the math works, but
the math, the math is given the fact that your Lochinvar and your Wiesmann have the same square footage of heat exchanger surface.
Yeah, they're pretty. They're
going to be similar.
Yeah, they're similar at the very worst. They're similar.
I just say that because I remember using this chart in the past when we're trying to do these replacements and go, well, what happens when I put my 85,000 BTU boiler with an 80 gallon tank? Can I make enough hot water?
Yeah.
Right. And the difference between 40,000 and 80,000 is between 154. Well, and so that's something else to think about. That's at 115 degree storage tank temp. You're 276 at 140 storage temp.
Yeah, so you're going to cut down on your gallons per minute rating.
Yeah, but you're also adding a mixing
storage.
valve. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Which means recovery is going to take a little bit longer.
Sure.
And that's why you're not going to get that gallons per minute or rating per hour kind of deal. The dump load's going to change. The problem is with all of this is the customer. I want to wrap it up, but the customer, I want to leave it with this. I made the judgment call to go, okay, I'm not going to try to convince this guy to go to an 80.
Sure.
He's convinced he needs 120.
Yeah.
In this scenario, what I do is if I do that, I'm spending too much time and I'll probably end up wrong. That's my problem. Is I want to go 80 and I think I can make 80 work just fine. But as soon as it doesn't, and his scenario was this, well, we do entertain. I said, well, how often? He's like, well, the holidays. I said, okay. I don't need a school bus except for on the holidays when my family arrives and I want to go, to the bowling alley and I want everybody to ride together. Yeah. I'm not going to buy that school bus and drive it for 364 days a year. And he's like, I get where you're going with this. And where I was going was obviously you don't need the school bus of an indirect tank is if you only need the 9-passenger, SUV during the week. You know what I mean? Like it just, the 364 days of the year, you can get away with something smaller. But you've been in that scenario and you could just see in the words the guy's using and the look on his face. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to give you what you want. As long as I can heat that tank enough so that your heating system still runs and isn't trying to make domestic hot water all the time. As long as I can pull that off, I guess I'll give you all the storage you want, but I don't think you need it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. You put the bid together and the number is huge. The number is a lot more than you might think. I mean, we're talking a price range of between I hate saying prices like this because it's going to be forever cemented in digital, on the
Right.
internet. But you're sub 20 grand, but you're over 13. Let's just say
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to put this water heater in. I mean, it's a big job to, like I have 20 hours on this.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm out of line on that.
I don't think
I
you
have
are
to
either because
remove 2 80-gallon tanks out of there
Right.
and repipe.
and they're 20 years old.
They're probably going to be pretty hard to empty out, and I have no idea what they weigh, but I'm guessing that it's
Couple
first of all, it's
hundred.
a 2-person job.
Yeah,
Like I'm going to have my guy come in, just like Ringer is going to come in, Mike Ring,
Yeah.
and help me for a couple hours, and that's going to be a Larry Curly Moe situation getting those tanks out of there. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I can tell you this: they're going to be better than 250 pounds apiece.
I know. I'm gonna have to bring the trailer. I'm not putting those things in the back of the van. No way.
No.
All right. That's enough about
Okay.
that. I don't think most people even listen to this to get to into this kind of technical talk.
You're like blah 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 blah.
And it was longer than I wanted to. So I'm wrapping it up, guys. Hey,
All right.
make sure you send us a message if you have any questions for us. Andy is eager to see your emails as well. So Andy, what is the email address?
It is maketradesgreatagain@gmail.com. So
there you go.
Also, hey, just something note, and somebody from Warrington, Pennsylvania, maybe send us a fan mail on, the text us here. You're limited to the number of characters. Apparently you can type to your heart's content. And if you exceed the characters, even though you're typing and you hit send, it just truncates the message to whatever fits.
So we don't have
I replied to you.
saying?
Yep.
Okay.
I replied to you back. Send us an email. If you gotta want to write us a novel, we'd love to get it. And we'll probably read it.
Don't limit what you're going to say to us.
Yeah,
just
but
if
send
you're
it
using
in the
that
email.
texting. You got to go to the email.
Yep.
Don't hold back. We want to hear it all. All right, guys. Take
Later.
it easy.